believe it. It's a great book. It really is a great book.
And you know what? You're not going to believe this, but I forgot to hit live.
That's all right.
We're just going to continue this. It is what it is. Man,
I've done, you know what? The joy of doing live is live. It's all the if you don't mess up a couple times in a few years, you're not doing it right.
This is like the second time I've done that within the last month. I'm a horrible host.
No, you're not. No, you're not. You're just a multifaceted person like myself. You know, it's called running and gunning. You're a one person band. That's what it is.
For listeners out there, this is the Gateway Podcast, and I'm talking live with Tim Shaw, and we're going to talk about his book, Sex, Murder, and Witchcraft in Nickel City. You're listening to United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM, New Orleans, and we're listening live from the edge of the Mojave. So, Tim.
Yes.
Tell me about this book, and where did this all come from?
Well, I have several books out, and I love my own hometown. I think that I have just gone and I was brought up here. I spent most of my life here, and the legends, the lores, the ghosts, the spirituality, the creativity that's in this area is amazing. And it's Buffalo, New York. A lot of people are like, oh my God, that's in the Rust Belt and all that. It doesn't matter. The history that has been left behind by all the people out there is something that is just crazy. And I fell in love with it. So this is actually this is actually going to be a chapter in my next book, which is going to be volume 2 of The Ghosts of Buffalo, Murder Mayhem in the Nickel City. So this is going to be this is a dedicated chapter all by itself. So I can't wait for that. I'm working on that now. I got 15 or 16 chapters done, and it's going to go through the editing process like very, very soon.
Well, Tim, I'm not going to lie, because I had a complete different topic for tonight, but when I saw that you wrote this book, which I haven't gotten a chance to read because I don't have a copy of it, but I'll get a copy. This book has it all. It's got murder, it's got witchcraft, it's got Native American magic, right?
It does, yeah. Well, you know what intrigued me about the case? I first learned about this case. This is a murder case from the 30s. And I first learned about it just by accident. I wandered in on it was just like a little talk someplace in a library. And they just brought it up as, in passing. And one of the big things that people don't realize is when they think about witchcraft, they think about Salem. And witchcraft had nothing to do here other than, the Salem witches or whatever. And that's wrong. First of all, I knew the late Raymond Buckland, who brought a lot of the Gardnerian traditions here to the United States, and Wicca is based on a lot of his work. So I got a chance to know him very well, but I found so much Native American witchcraft here, especially in Western New York. We are in an area called the Western Door. It's part of the Iroquois Confederacy. And there is such a belief in the manipulation of the spirits and being able to go and draw curses and lift curses. There's so much here. I found not too far away from me, maybe a 10-minute drive, I found a cemetery that was basically placed, and it's a German Ebenezer cemetery, basically placed upon the location of a cabin of a Seneca witch, where she was supposedly gone and taken care of somebody, and they died. And the women who were the big force in the Iroquois nation, the clan mothers, they said that she bewitched him and killed him. And to make a long story short, they executed her and buried her in the floor of the floor of her cabin. When the Ebenezer Society took over the area, they went and put their first colonists in all these little areas that had like buildings, like mills, and there were some buildings around there were some Seneca farms and everything here, and they put them there after the reservation was sold. Well, they put people in this cabin, and the leader in his memoirs, his official memoirs, talks about the things that happened, the crying, the moaning, the I believe he saw apparitions, the sounds of chains being dragged, as he stayed in that cabin. And they abandoned the cabin and eventually was burned. And they established their cemetery, except there's an area in sort of the back where the cabin was, and nobody's buried there in that area. So there is such a huge amount of belief in witchcraft here in this area. And, I was kind of going through this, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going, why does this affect so much other stuff out there? Why, there's so much of it that goes on, and it's hidden because, we're talking about the post-European occupation, all this, where a lot of the Eastern tribes lost their identities after the Revolutionary War, and that era of poverty that they had, and the reservation times. So a lot of that has gone. But one day, I stumbled upon again this a part of this lecture, and it had everything. It had Native American witchcraft. It had a Ouija board. It had adultery. It had salacious news. It was called the crime of the century, and it all rolled together. And I just thought it was one of the most fascinating stories that I've ever came across.
Can you kind of piece together a little bit of the story?
Story is great. Henri Marchand. I'm sorry. Maurice Marchand was a hockey player, and I'm an old hockey guy. So, but Henri Marchand was a famous sculptor, and he was from France. And him and his wife were hired by the Buffalo Young Men's Association to create dioramas, these small dioramas, for a museum that was being built here in Buffalo, New York, the Museum of Science. So in order to do that, he uprooted his family and he came to Buffalo. So his older sons, he had three sons and a daughter. Two of the older sons worked with him on these miniatures, these dioramas. And what their job was, they had to create the fauna of the area of Western New York. So they created these beautiful clay and ceramic flowers and different types of leaves and vines that they're still on display today. But also part of it was to create, and remember, we're not in an era, we're talking about the 1930s here.
Right.
We're not in an era where we're starting to get movies and all that, but not when you go to a museum, or now there's all these monitors and stuff, and we're not like that anymore. You had these huge dioramas that showed everything from prehistoric life to Neanderthalic life to what was going on pre-European contact here in this local area. So they would make these small clay figurines, and they would create these beautiful dioramas for people to come in and see what life was, let's say in the 1700s or 1600s.
Okay, so that's the connect. I was trying to figure out the connection between the Native American witchcrafts and kind of the more historical aspect.
Well, here's the thing. Henri Marchand was a dog and a half. We're just going to call him a dog and a half. And back at that time, they always felt that artists needed to be free in order to create their art. And one of the things that he needed to be free to do was to actually live with these Native Americans. And he had several affairs with Native American women. And his excuse was, I have to have sex with these women in order for them to allow me to sketch them and create these figurines, And it was, I mean, he was a dog and a half. It was, it was just, the guy was ahead of his time. He should have been in disco, but that's another story. So he did this. And there's a woman by the name of Lily Jameson who really fell in love with him. And now she knew about his wife. She knew he lived in Buffalo. She knew so much about him that, well, she needed something to help go and maybe perhaps enchant him. So what does she do? She goes and she talks to a root woman here by the name of Nancy Bowen. Nancy Bowen is an uncultured, uneducated woman on the reservation who just happens to know about how to do cursings. So they get together and they do several different rituals, witchcraft rituals. None of them work. And one of them was very interesting because we all know about voodoo dolls, right? We all know.
Right.
But we know that voodoo dolls are the offshoot of puppets, which are European witchcraft. So what they did was they took some of the love letters that Marchant had sent to Lily Jameson and created puppets out of them. Then they took him to the cemetery, and Nancy's husband had died. He's been an alcoholic and he had heart problems, and he died, and they buried them on his grave in order to go and, make it extra powerful. So they waited and they waited and they waited, and nothing happened. Marchant is still coming out to visit Lila onto the Cattaraugus Reservation. Clothy, who is Henry's wife, is still going around, doing her thing. The kids are doing whatever. She goes, so we got to do something more. We need to do something more. So what would anybody do in this situation? Let me ask you this. Well, they would go and consult one of the best, fastest growing occult spiritualist devices in the world, a Ouija board.
And this is in the 1930s.
This is the 1930s. So they take this Ouija board, and Lila and Nancy Bowen, they're going and they're working the Ouija board, right? They're working this Ouija board. And the Ouija, they ask, let me ask this. Do you think that Nancy, your husband, was bewitched? Goes to yes. Who bewitched him and killed him? Spelled out Marchant's wife's name, Clothy, right? Where does she live? Where does she live? And she lived on this Riley Street in Buffalo, and it's spelled out with the number house, the street number. It spelled it out. What can we do to punish her, to break this spell that she has upon us and for, she has on keeping Henry Marchant captive. I like we said captive, didn't want to divorce him, captive. Kill him, it said. Well, you have to understand something. Lila was semi-educated. She used to play the church organ and in the Christian school in the reservation. Nancy Bowen was not. She couldn't read or write. So she has no idea what the Ouija board is saying.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, they go and they figure out, well, we've got to get to Buffalo. So they get to Buffalo. On the way to Buffalo, Lila buys a hammer and a jar of chloroform, because you could buy chloroform off, in any pharmacy then. So they go and they plot what they're going to do. Well, Nancy goes to the house on Riley Street, and Lila Jameson looks for her lover, goes to the museum. And according to court documents, it says they went for a drive. Because why? Indians love car rides. And I'm thinking to myself, well, let's read between the lines on this one, right? Building up an alibi and everything. Nancy goes to the house, walks up the stairs, knocks on the door. Clothy, who opens the door, says, "Who are you?" And Nancy looks at her and goes, "Are you a witch?" Well, I guess was not uncommon for Native Americans to come to the house because he had been working on these dioramas. And Clothy says, "A witch? Yeah, I'm a witch, all right." Basically is what she said. Turns around, walks into the house. Nancy walks in and clobbers her with the hammer and they fight, and he hits her a couple times again. She takes a rag that's soaked in the chloroform that Lila had bought, shoved it down her throat, which caused her to die. Now, what happens? The youngest son comes home from school, discovers the body. They go. He runs down to the museum, gets the father. They come back. Police come back. Initially, the police felt it was a accident. She fell down the stairs. She hit her head and she died. Well, unfortunately, they had a good forensics expert there that smelled chloroform on the body. They did the autopsy, and they said that she had suffocated. Immediately, they questioned the husband. What's the first thing the police tell you? Always question the spouse first. Question the husband. What does the husband do? Throws Lila under the bus immediately. Admits to the affair, throws Lila under the, well, not really he said that she had an infatuation with me. Throws her under the bus. They go get her. They put her in jail. She turns on Nancy Bowen, who killed her, throws her under the bus. She gets arrested. Now, this is a sensation because you have to understand, Marchand was a student of Rodin. This is huge. He was a sculptor extraordinaire. So newspapermen from around the country converge on Buffalo, New York, because this was yet another crime of the century. Of course, I mean, we did have several. You had Fatty Arbuckle and that famous party and where the woman died apparently after nefarious things going on. We had Warren G. Harding, who died, they say, within the arms of his mistress, or perhaps his wife went and murdered him, and because they didn't have an autopsy and they embalmed him pretty quick and put him in the box. So we had several crimes of the century going on, and Buffalo was a big place. You had the Erie Canal, you got all this stuff going on at the time. And so what happens? They go and first of all, you got to remember the time period. Native Americans were downtrodden and they did not get a fair shake no matter where they went. So they actually hired Clarence Darrow to come in to advise on the case, which he did. He didn't persecute or didn't prosecute or didn't defend, but he did go and advise on it. And they went and they started working on it. Well, it ended up that, make a super long, boring court case short, they found Lila innocent. They found her innocent. But the one thing I did forget to say is a material witness was Henri Marchand. So they threw him in jail because they knew he wanted to flee. He wanted to go. He wanted to get away because they were afraid. He was afraid that he was going to be up for either manslaughter. Well, they find her innocent. Why? Because they found the love letters between Marchand and Lila.
Oh.
These love letters. And he talked about how he wanted to leave his wife. There's some way that if I could only leave my wife, if my wife wasn't alive, my wife wasn't around. So they felt that she was a woman wronged and she was acquitted. But poor Nancy Bowen, well, no, she wasn't acquitted quite yet. Poor Nancy Bowen she cops to manslaughter. So the day comes that they're going to go, and again, they were going to acquit. They were going to acquit Lila Jameson. Lila Jameson collapses in court. She had tuberculosis. She ends up in the hospital. The judge calls a mistrial. Now they're going to go and call it. They're going to go and they're going to try it again. Second time comes around. Definitely comes back. Mistrial. Or, Lila's innocent. Nancy Bowen is going to get 1 to 10 years in jail for the murder. Well, the judge luckily said this was, he felt that Marchand, he had released, had more to do with it. He felt that Lila was more complicit with it, but they didn't have enough grounds to convict her. So they commuted Nancy Bowen's sentence. Nancy Bowen disappears back onto the reservation, is never heard from again. Lila marries, and they make it a big point to say, white guy in Perrysburg, New York, lives until 1972 with tuberculosis. And Henri Marchand. Well, Henri has that wandering eye. He leaves Buffalo. His 2 sons are still here. They're working on the dioramas. He leaves Buffalo, goes to Troy, New York, where he goes and marries his 16-year-old stepdaughter, or I should say foster daughter, Ward. Let's just call her a Ward, and marries her. And they stay together for the rest of their life. But the sad part about it, the very, very sad part about it, and you know how I work. I do a lot of work in abandoned cemeteries, and I reclaim.
Right.
We do a lot of reclamation of tombstones and that sort of thing. The sad thing is even though the 2 sons still lived here in Buffalo, they never marked the grave of their mother. So Clothia Marchand, to this day, lies in an unmarked grave in Forest Lawn in Buffalo, New York. So that's the story of it.
That's such a fascinating story. Now, in your opinion, just from your medium, was there any aspect of this murder that do you feel that had like a spiritual or energetic forces influencing the events?
I feel that a lot of it came Native American wise. I believe that a lot of it was the fact that this love affair created the curse because of the intrinsic desire, the inspiration, that pointed, focused energy that caused the wheels to go into motion. And I think that had a lot to do with it. But again, a lot of it has to do with the whole belief in witchcraft and what it can and can't do. And the ritual itself, when we break apart a ritual, we look at a ritual, and if you break that down, that's a focused, or I should say, that's a like a stylized prayer. And when you break down a stylized prayer, you're looking at a focused intent, a highly focused intent. So I believe a lot of it, and I believe it was almost like, I won't say, see, the newspapers always go and say that Nancy Bowen was duped into it. I don't think it was so much being duped. I believe Lila Jameson went and had such a focused intent that she was able to go and manipulate the energy around this woman, not to do her bidding like a zombie, but to influence it enough to be able to go and make her not even think twice about committing murder.
That's interesting. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize when you do any kind of spell work within like Wicca or anything, what you're doing is actually funneling your energy into a certain focal point. Exactly.
Now, the Ouija board, unfortunately, and we all know that there's 2 ways of working with a Ouija board. It's either A, you're moving it yourself, the planchette yourself, or B, it becomes part of the ideomotor reflex, which is a series of micro movements. In this case, I believe it was more of an intentional thing that she did. But
Mm.
so many cases like this that I've gone in, like the Ouija board told me to do this. The Ouija board told me to take all my money out and put it in some stocks. It is, where does this come from? Is it the higher self? Is it coming from? Is it coming from a spiritual angle? Is it coming? Are you the accidental antenna that is going and bringing this flow of energy through your hands, creating your brain, creating these micro movements in order to move the planchette itself? So unfortunately, again, in this case, I believe it was manipulation. But when we look at like that, those teenage boys in Texas, probably a decade ago, where the Ouija board said, "Kill their friend," and they went and they attacked him. And this boy almost died from being stabbed and strangled. Where does this come from? I don't believe it was one boy was manipulating it, because I don't believe that. It could be. I mean, I don't know the whole case, but I believe somehow, some way, it was some kind of negative energy that manipulated, that ideomotor response, and it spelled out, "Kill this kid."
That's an interesting thing too, because a lot of people like to believe that it is just I forget the term you used for the small
Ideomotor.
Yeah, the ideomotor, but you yourself just had a seance with a large, heavy table, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. In Palmyra, New York, at the Palmyra Historical Society. Was at the Phelps General Store. And the Phelps General Store was a 3-story building. It's right on the Erie Canal. And in the 1930s, when they closed the store up, they closed it. They have eggs in this store from the 1930s still. It's amazing.
wow.
And 80% or 90% of everything in this building is original to the building. They just closed it down. And a woman by the name of Sybil Phelps was the last of the Phelps family that lived there. She was a spiritualist. She was a reader. And she lived in there for many, many years. And they preserved this historically in as pure form as they possibly can. So I did a fundraiser up there. I did a gallery work for them. But for the VIP, we went into the VIP tickets. We went into the Phelps General Store, second floor, and we were in the dining room. And we had, I think, 13 people around the table. And I'm going to be honest with you. Anybody that knows seance knows that there's two types of seances. There's open seance, where you have different people just hanging out, that's what it is. Or you have a closed seance where the same people meet on a regular basis in order to synchronize your energy. Well, this night, I got to say that it was kind of a weird night. You could kind of feel it, the atmosphere. Whenever the barometric pressure kind of like fluctuates a little bit, it feels as if that something may happen physically. And we're there. And of course, if with me, I'm like prepared that nothing's going to happen. I've got Ouija boards, I got pendulums, I got toys, I got all my paranormal toys, I got all this stuff just to be on the safe side, because these are VIP people, and I'm trying to go and we're trying to raise money for a good cause. And so we put our hands on the table, and you could feel like vibrations coming right up through the table. And I kind of looked around, and I could see like people like looking at each other, right? Now it's got a tablecloth on it. Most times when you do table tipping, you don't have a tablecloth on it. Because what happens is inevitably that the cloth will move under your hands. And they believe that we have chakra points in all our fingers and our palm, and that creates an ectoplasmic bond with the table, and that's what helps move the table. So it's got a tablecloth on it. And we're sitting there, and there's like this vibration coming up, and I do a stylized Victorian, but it's the way I was taught. So it's not like 100% Victorian seance, but it's the way I was taught, and it has a very heavily Victorian, format. So I'm doing my thing, and everybody introduces themselves. We're here for one reason. We're here for physical phenomena, blah blah blah. We got our hands on the table, and you could feel it. You could feel it coming up. And you usually have someone who runs it, and then you have somebody at the opposite end who's what they consider a battery. And everybody's focal point. You put your energy into that person. That person, it comes through his hands and goes into the table. Well, all of a sudden, the table starts to vibrate, and I'm going, this is interesting, right? And first thing I do, I'm checking, because we're not doing it in total darkness. It's dim light. So the table's moving a little bit, and I'm looking to make sure that somebody's thumb isn't stuck underneath the table, or somebody, I'm looking to make sure that people aren't like pressing on it. And no, everybody's just like nice and easy. All of a sudden, the table goes one way, 2, 3, 4, and then goes back to center. And I'm talking, it's like a foot on each side. I was like, oh my God. I mean, they have what I said. I won't say on your show, but I was like, and they caught it on their CCTV. And at that point, it was like, I just went and said, well, that's it. Nothing else is going to happen tonight, because this took all the energy. And the funny part is the guy that was the battery, acting as a battery, all of a sudden we're hearing a buzzer.
Mm-hmm.
The battery in one of his hearing aids drained dead.
Wow.
So I mean, it was amazing. But to me, a lot of times, even the table tipping could be idiomotor reflex, or idiomotor response, because again, it builds up. They say that the ectoplasm builds up and it starts to move, and you have to really kind of watch that. But again, this table had a tablecloth on it, so there's just no way that it could be manipulated. It was a great experience. And again, I love doing that because, first of all, I love communities and I like being able to raise money for people. But I just thought, wow. And the best part about it, you ready for this?
Yes.
It was Sybil's birthday that night.
Was it?
We were celebrating her 130th birthday.
And this is Sybil, the medium?
Sybil, the medium, who used to live in the house. So to me, that was like, I think Sybil came back to say hi, thanks for thinking of me. So it was great. That was a great experience. So, if you can ever get like experiences like that, those are peak experiences. I've been doing this. I've been involved in this stuff since way before you were born.
Mm-hmm.
I was,
you grew up in Lily Dale.
Well, yeah. Well, I didn't grow up directly in Lily Dale, but I had all my relatives there, so we spent a lot of time down there. And so I, back in the 70s, early 70s, I mean, this was stuff that I learned. This was stuff that we would do on weekends. We'd all get together and do it. Or we'd go to, we'd have Lyceum, which is a spiritualist Sunday school. And the first part of it was all like, you had to know, universe and all this other stuff. And, Andrew Davis Jackson and all the pioneers of the spiritualism movement and all that. And afterwards, after your little break, you went and you did children's seances and you practiced healing, and you understood about, working with mediumship and how to harness energy. And then we're little kids, just trying to do that. And they were trying to go and educate us to be of service. To be of service to both sides, those on each side of the veil, those in the living and those on the other side. And with me, at least, it was a profound effect. And back then, people are like, "Oh, Tim, you're a great medium and all this." I am not a great medium. You know what? I'm an adequate medium, because I saw some of these guys back in the day. I saw a guy go into a trance, jump up out of his chair, and run into a wall and break his nose. He hit the wall so hard because he was in trance. Bam! Down. And he just kept going. And then when he came out of trance, you could tell, he grabbed his nose, and he'd taken his handkerchief, and at that time, the women all wore skirts or dresses down to their ankles, and the guys were all dressed in 3-piece suits, and they all had pinky rings, and they had the diamond tie studs and everything. And I always remember his suit was all covered like when blood were from his nose. But you saw stuff like that, and you would sit there, and these people would say, they even in open galleries, in message work, they'd come to you and they'd say, blah blah blah. I was never a person that I could get initials, but I was never a person that could get full names. Once in a while, I can get full names, but some of these people would come out with full names, last names. And I remember some of the readings that I got back in when I was a little kid were so specific that I remember a friend of mine sitting there with me like this, with his mouth open, because they were words that we had just uttered on the drive down there. So yeah, it was an amazing time then.
Wow, that's incredible. I don't
But
even know. I really like talking to you for so many different reasons. One, because you do talk about the real aspects of spiritual work, which the rest of the paranormal world just doesn't talk about.
I agree. You gotta have a goal. You gotta have a goal with this. And again, in the show that we just did, I had told you, I had a guy tell me once, what you're learning here, when I was a kid in Lily Dale, what you're learning here is to be an addition to your life, not to be your life, which means get a job, be out there with real people. Don't isolate yourself in a cult-like community, which can happen. I mean, you really, because a lot of people will go. I took classes at the Omega Institute up at Rhinebeck, New York. Magical. It took me 2 weeks to come down from a 3-day class, a 3-day experience. And what happens is a lot of people go to these places and the energy is just amazing and you get intoxicated. And the problem is that all of a sudden you start to lose that grip on true reality. And then when you come back, when you're forced to come back into reality, you're like, oh, this is terrible. I'm not gonna make it. And what this gentleman was telling me, and it's so funny because I think to myself, I'm 68 now, and this guy was probably younger then than I am now, and he told me this great thing. But really, keep grounded, stay in reality, do what you can, but be of service. Be of service. Let this spirituality be a good, important part of your life. Let it guide you. Life is tough. Everybody steps in that horse poop, baby. You know what I mean? You're wandering through, you step in it no matter what. I just had to put a new deck on my house. I just had to get a new car and my furnace all went. So it's like, you get all this at once, but you keep it in here. This spirituality makes you understand that this is all superficial, that this is what's important. And what else is important? It's important to be of service to people and to help. And, and we talk about that. And a lot of people, when I say this, they all think, oh, right away, you do cleansings and you do this and you've worked with exorcists and you've done, you worked with demonologists on cases and stuff. Well, that's the spiritual side. What about the human side here? You have to take the time to do it. You have to, and that's why, and again, we always talk about volunteerism and we, all the crazy stuff that I do. So, it's so, it becomes all encompassing, but it makes you I think it makes you a better human being. It puts all your experiences, positive and negative, puts it into that bubble and makes you gestalt it, makes you look at it and makes you say, yeah, it's all part of being human and I can take this. It's tough. Don't let anybody tell you it ain't an easy thing, kid, but that. But it's like it makes you appreciate. And I think that's what's important with it. It makes you appreciate life in general.
Well, I think one of the big aspects of the paranormal that a lot of the community is missing is that a lot of it isn't really about running through abandoned buildings and screaming and all that kind of stuff.
It's not
Hollywood paranormal. It's small things. It's like if you really pay attention, spirit will guide you in the direction you need to go.
And spirit will kick you when you have to move. And spirit will tell you when it's time to get out of a situation. It's funny because people always say, you're just like one of those guys. He goes, you're like a rat leaving a sinking ship sometimes. How do you know? A couple of years ago, there was a big event, huge event, mega event that was happening in Pennsylvania. And I was all part of it, and it's like, this is great. And and mega events are just like, it's like it's like the old network TV on acid, because everybody's at these places and you get a chance to talk to everybody, you know, and it's like, oh, it's so exciting. And stuff is happening and people are talking and it's like overwhelming. And it got about 2-3 weeks away and something inside of me said, walk away. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean walk away? I've got a table. I mean, they're flying me there. I got a room. I got this opportunity to hang out with all these TV people and network people and get my books out there and everything and talk. Something inside said, walk away from it. Best thing I ever did. I always remember Aaron Sagers coming up and saying to me, you said there was something wrong. There was something not right. I remember you saying that to me. And it's like, I don't know what. And not to get into it. Yeah, there was some problems, and there was a lot of residual problems afterwards. So I made the right decision, but it's like, it's not me making it, because logically, listen, you know what? I got a man brain. Ask my wife. My wife will come right up and tell you that this does not function. It does not function logically. But spiritually, I've always been able to know when it was time to walk away, get out of the party, go home. And I know for a fact that it's not me. I know for a fact it's spirit. And when it's, and when the time is right. And it's so funny because a lot of people also ask me, well, Tim, you gave up all your representation how many years ago? I said, yeah, probably about 20 years ago. I said, I don't have an agent or anything. And they go, why? I said, because I didn't want one. I didn't care. I had a day job. I had a great day job, man. I retired, had great pension. And, Spirit just put all these wonderful things on my path. I did great events. I don't know. I was on like 13, I was featured on like 12, 13 shows. I don't even remember anymore, where I was on TV. I didn't set out to do any of this stuff. The Black Cat Lounge is almost 25 years old in one form or another. We did it. I never paid a penny for anything. It was just given to me. People gave it to me. These owners gave it to me. So I just allow Spirit to take me around. I met the late Raymond Buckland at Lily Dale. I didn't even know it was him. We're talking about him growing up during the Blitz in England. And this guy said to me, he goes, do you know who that was? I said, no. He goes, that's Ray Buckland. I said, you got to be kidding me. That's where I met him. I had read his books, but I didn't know that was him.
That is so incredible. I would love to have met him.
He had a photographic memory. I interviewed him twice. The first time, out of respect, I said, Ray, I'm going to give you the questions up front. He answered all my 12, 13 questions in like 15 minutes. And I was like, oh, so you just had to roll with it. But he was a Renaissance man. He just was not like 100% into the craft. He was, as part of his belief system. He was a leader in it. He was a great teacher in it. He suffered. The stories he tells me, when they burnt his car, when they found out he was outed in the paper of all things, and somebody burnt his car in New Jersey. So he faced some some oppression. But he was a script writer. He knew he knew actors. He went and he had a pilot. He built experimental planes. He built cars. He loved fast cars. He was a collector of occult things. My friends run the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magic in Cleveland, Ohio. They have pieces from his collection, from Aleister Crowley. They have all these amazing pieces in there. He knew so much, and he was on the bottom. He was on the ground floor of it. So he was a prolific author, and towards the end of his life, he stopped writing about magic, and he started writing Victorian mystery novels. Phenomenal, and he was a great writer. So he was a Renaissance man. To know him you could only, for him, now I only knew him in what they call the Lily Dale years. So I only knew this much of him, this much. All I knew is when he used to, he'd blow in the town with that. He had a black Corvette, and all people just used to come running at him, you know. But you know, he was amazing back then. But there was so much more of him. There's a great biography that they recently published on him that I learned so much about. But he was also a jazz musician. He was so he loved life, and he lived it fully right to the end. So I mean, that's amazing. I met a good friend of mine, witch doctor or two, up in Canada. I met him at a Yule celebration, and he plays voodoo drums with the Dragon Ritual Drummers. That's his band. So I got a chance to meet him. Through him, I met people in hoodoo. I met Santeria people. It's just amazing because of the fact that I never set out to go and meet anybody.
It's like the spirit led you to all of these places, and
Exactly.
that's what's amazing about it. Well, Tim, we're out of time.
Amazing. So, it's amazing because why? Yeah. Because you are effervescent and iridescent. That's why, and everybody wants to talk to you.
It could be because I didn't hit live.
It's all. I've done it. I am so guilty. Been there, done it myself.
Real quick, where can people find your book and in the Black Cat Lounge?
Well, the Black Cat Lounge, we are on. You can go on my Facebook page. We're live on my Facebook page, Timothy Shaw, and you can go on timothytshaw.com. And I'll have some encore shows there, and it shows you how to get my books and stuff and all the classes that I teach. But we're also on the Paraflix radio or Paraflix network, and my encore shows are on ParaX on the ParaX radio network. So I'm all over the place, you know, just hanging out. And you know, listen, I get a chance to hang out with cool people like C.L. Thomas. You got to understand, she's cool. She's beyond cool. She's cool. I'm telling you, I tell everybody, I'm a fanboy. I am a fanboy. Yes, I am.
Well, Tim, don't go away, all right?
You got it, kiddo.
Thank you so much, Tim, for being on the show. You've been listening to The Gateway, broadcast from the edge of the Mojave where the strange slips through the cracks, live from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM, New Orleans. My guest tonight, he's a dear friend, Tim Shaw, author of Sex, Murder, and Witchcraft in Nickel City, and he's also the host of Black Cat Lounge. Thank you guys all for listening, and I am so sorry that I forgot to hit live at the beginning of this show. So we're missing about probably 10 minutes. But if you missed a show, you can catch me on YouTube. Just go look for my channel. Everything is stored there. Thank you all for listening, and until next time.